Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our very first SCAD Storytellers Series of 2022. I'm SCAD film producer and director Brantley Watts, and I am honored to be your moderator today. Now, I know we have students tuning in today from Savannah and Atlanta, but I also want to give a very warm welcome to all the late nighters at our study abroad campus in Lacoste, France. Today, we're joined by the amazingly talented set decorator, Jess Royal. Jess is a two-time Emmy Award-nominated film and television professional, including this year. Congrats, Jess. Whose credits include Black Widow, Dumplin', Christine, and The Spectacular Now. And of course, Jess has also been essential in developing the look and feel of the sci-fi and horror elements that all come together to create the sinister world of Stranger Things. Today, we're incredibly fortunate to have Jess pull back the curtain on the iconic looks of the nostalgic series. Please join me in welcoming Jess Royal.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of SCAD, and I have hired many SCAD students as PAs and things, and it's been invaluable to me. So it's great to be with you guys. So I put together a slideshow because Brantley said that we should have some kind of presentation. And so since the theme of this is visual storytelling, I thought what better than to pick one of our sets, because our sets in Stranger Things have kind of their own weight. They're almost like their own character. And so to keep it relevant, since a lot of our sets go through a lot of transformations, we had the Byers house has been through a lot. And the Hopper's cabin, you've seen it kind of go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So for this season, I think the set that had the most range was the Krill House. So I thought I would just show you guys kind of start to finish how we go through picking a location and transforming that location. A lot of times we build those sets on our stage as well as using the actual location. We have the first slide is the house, the actual location that is in Rome, Georgia. And we knew we wanted a Victorian Gothic house, like kind of I think the Duffers would probably prefer I say like a Stephen King house, but to me it's like a Scooby-Doo house. But we knew we wanted that. And so to get the scale that we needed out of that, there's not really a lot in Atlanta. So you kind of have to go to like Macon or Rome to find a location like that. So we knew as soon as we saw it, this was going to be the house for us in Rome. And when we got there, a lot of white walls. It was also kind of in transition. They were sort of remodeling and stuff. So you can see the foyer was white. Let me slide over here. And then we have some of these other areas of the house, like old wallpaper, things under construction. We knew we definitely had to transform it one way or another. So it was just a question of what we did with it. The attic in the actual location, which you see here, was not big enough for us to do anything practical. Also, just getting equipment, camera equipment, all that stuff up there was not going to be practical. So that was one of the motivating reasons why we ended up building the whole interior on our stage as well. But we did shoot all the exteriors there in Rome. And then we also dressed, now we're into the 50s here. So this is the first stage that you see the house, in the Stranger Things world. And so it's the late 50s. And we knew that we wanted the interior to be something that would age well, that we could bring, age down in the 1980s and it would feel really creepy. So wallpaper is really good for that because it all kind of peels away. And also just some darker colors. So we added William Morris wallpaper pretty much throughout the house, which is really gorgeous and beautiful. There's some metallic elements. It picks up light well. So it looks great in the 1950s. But it also looks really great when you peel it away and make it look really old and corroded as well. So, and then one of the other things that we had to really think about was what kind of furniture do we want to put in there? Because really it's a huge scale of a house back when furniture was a lot larger. But we also didn't want to lose some of our kind of 50s touches. So we kind of did a mix and match. You see some of our like early 50s furniture in the living room, some of the electronics, are like maybe a little bit dated. It feels like, it's kind of like this family's moving into this house and they don't quite fit, and there's something off about them. And there's something a little bit that kind of jives with that, with the furniture. Not all being huge, Victorian scaled furniture. So you can see, this is how we brought it up. This is Alice's room that we see briefly. And this is all, and actually I think all these photos are from the location, but I can't be 100% sure because we copied it so exactly on our stage, and we built it all exactly the same and did it all the same for the 50s. So it's almost hard for me to tell which is which. But we shot some scenes in both places, but we started with it in a pristine in the 1950s version on our stage, just so that we could age it down and it would all be like accurately aged, rather than just sort of half-assing it, So this is the bathroom. That was definitely all built on our stage. We did not shoot that practically at the actual house. So you can see, I'm just going to show you some of these slides as I kind of talk to you, because I just want to get through these 50s ones. And then that's the attic that we built on our stage that was big enough to hold Vecna. And hopefully most of you have seen this and there won't be any spoilers here, but so that he could have his little sort of floating nether upside down home. Okay, and now we're into the 1980s. So we aged the actual house in Rome to look like it had been sitting there for, however many years. Boarded it up, added vines, did all that stuff. Boarded up the door for that beat. And now you can see inside, this is the transformation. So peeling wallpaper, dust everywhere. We have some spots in the house that plaster and things have fallen down, on the carpet. That was another important element to me, is to have some of that like wall-to-wall carpet, because it's like what everyone did in their house in the 1950s, but it also takes age well and takes like, leaky roofs and like kind of like mold, and all the plaster and stuff actually shows up really well on like wall-to-wall carpet. So that was important. There, see the dining room. This is an iconic scene where Max and Lucas are talking for a while in this study. And so we have all the busted blinds and all of that stuff. The music room. The iconic bathroom where the spiders were kept in the floor. And then for our next slide, so this is the next stage of this transformation of this house, is to do the upside down. So this is kind of our approach to the upside down in all of our sets, is we always add a pretty heavy layer of like practical vines and things. Even when it's exteriors, like the trailer park and stuff, we added a bunch all over the trailer park. And then visual effects can come in and sort of like make it feel alive and add some additional elements, and then all the spores and things that you see in the upside down. Yeah, we really covered this house. Let's see. And then that's Vecna floating in his attic. And then there is still another stage that we see the house in, which is Vecna's, we called it the Mindscape, or at least that's how it was scripted. And it's his sort of fragments of his memories, and when he's sort of like attacking people, to take their power and feed off of that. So here you can see we built it yet again on a different stage. Certain elements that were iconic to the house, along with these kind of like nether spires that we have, like of vines and things. And we had all of our body dummies and things that we attached to those. But it was pretty cool. It's like a cantilevered staircase, so it kind of floats, which made for a good creepy backdrop, for Nancy and for 11 in some of those scenes. And that's the last slide that I have actually to show the Krill House. So there we go. So I wanted to use that as an example to kind of show you how we go about transforming a space. There are lookbooks that I shared with Brantley that I think you guys will be able to access One of those is the Creel House lookbook. So it's like, it was scripted. We hadn't found the location yet. I went ahead and put together a lookbook of what I thought, just based on what the words were on the paper, what it should be. And so you can kind of see from that early position, the full, if it lived up to kind of what my initial ideas were. And I think a lot of it is there, like heavy draperies, wall-to-wall carpet, sort of dated wallpaper, all of that stuff. But you can kind of see like the initial ideas versus what was actually on screen for the final edit of Stranger Things. So yeah, I don't know, Brantley, I think that's kind of my presentation.
Yeah, it is. So first of all, Jess, thank you so much for this really cool sneak peek into the Krill House and season 4. And as Jess mentioned, she very graciously shared not just a lookbook of the Krill House, but of the trailer park and the airport and so many different things. If you go to the resources button on the bottom left of your screen, it's the little icon that has, it looks like bullet points. You can actually see all of those lookbooks. They're a fantastic resource. So thank you, Jess, for sharing that. It's an invaluable resource for our students. And kicking that off, speaking of your process, let's talk a little bit about the importance of your lookbooks for projects. And then also, what does research look like for you for a project like this?
So I didn't always do the lookbook thing, and I learned my lesson. Like it is really beneficial to have something to show your director and the cinematographer, so that everyone knows kind of like what to expect and where you're coming from, and if there's any major redirect or if they hate something, then they can tell you right away. It's actually less important almost for Stranger Things, only from that level of like an approval, like presentation aspect, because the Duffers are so easy and so gracious, and they let us sort of direct everything, the production designer and I and the art director. So I do it more for the people below me, actually, so that they know what they're shopping for, the look. Everyone can be on the same page for the right vibe of any given set. So there's that factor. And then also a lot of just period electronics and things. Like I feel comfortable out in the world. I can shop and I know all day long, like that's 1978, that's like 1982. That's, like I am like a resource. But sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Let me just end that. Okay. But it's good for everyone else to see like some of the younger buyers or people who maybe aren't as familiar with our period. They can kind of have I know that everything I put in my lookbook is appropriate. And so they can go off of that like a Bible if they want to, or, if they want to branch out, that's fine too. But I like to pull things from catalogs even and put them in lookbooks. So there's some really tangible, like you can see like a product number or something, so if someone wants to go on eBay, or a lot of times I'll do that, like in bed at night, I'll just, search for some of those product numbers and see if I can find that exact thing and just get it in our hands.
You said something really cool in our conversation earlier where you were talking about, you go to estate sales and for instance, you might see that everyone in 1987 had a Sears catalog.
Right.
Do you, obviously that's something that you remember. And like you said, you're a walking resource, but do you already have ideas formed of what you want in a place based on your expertise in certain time periods?
I do. And, a lot of that knowledge, and that people ask me this question all the time, like, how do you know, how did you acquire this knowledge of like what date something is from? And I don't have a great answer for that, except for I stay aware of my surroundings at all times. And if you go, there are certain estate sales, like I'll send a young buyer sometimes to an estate sale that I know 100% everything in that estate sale is going to be period appropriate, because like some old lady like didn't update her house after 1980 at all, like brought nothing new into her environment, and has since like moved to a retirement home or passed away. And so everything in that house, it's almost like an exploration, so that someone can familiarize themselves with, what all is period appropriate. And they can't really go wrong by choosing something that's like from 2000 or whatever. Because I have a real, like, if you ever want to upset me, that's the best way to do it, is to bring like new modern stuff into my world, because I like try to curate a fully, anything you pull off the shelves in our warehouse can be on the set of Stranger Things. So it needs to be period.
You've done a lot of period work. I mean, Christine is a great example, and I remember speaking to you about that project when you worked on it, which was incredible. It actually screened at our Savannah Film Festival, which was fantastic for me to see and know that that was some of your work. How did you get into period design specifically?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I'm in film at all was because I was a history and a philosophy major in college, much to my father's dismay, who's like a businessman. And then I have a law background after that. So I've always loved history. It's my favorite thing. I love just putting myself in the shoes of someone who lived at a different time and what that fully, all of the sort of sensory overload that would come with that. So I knew I wanted to do something with history, but I also wanted to do something creative. This is all after I quit my law background. And so I just had to find that right niche that's like history and creativity together. And so really period film is like the best way it keeps my brain. It's the only job that I can think of that keeps my brain firing on all cylinders at all times, like researching, thinking, finding new ways to like investigate different things. It's just, it's like a sensory overload all the time. It's great.
Another thing that we talked about was a specific course you took on pop culture. And I do want to say at SCAD, one of the things that we really like to talk to students about is how collaborative the arts are, whether it's film or animation or a lot of the other specific like digital media art forms. It's incredibly collaborative. We may have students who go into animation that take one class that's gaming, and then they decide, wait a minute, I want to use all of this knowledge and the skills that I've developed in my animation degree and go into the gaming industry. And you took a specific class on pop culture. And I remember you told me that really changed things for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So like it was later in college, because I was a double major, all of my electives canceled each other out. So I didn't really branch out beyond philosophy and history until I needed like one credit. I was one credit short. So I just took this random class on it was a speech communications, but it was a pop culture subculture class. And it was like, and I was already a senior at that point, and it was like I just wish I had done that from the beginning. It was just like it was the most inspiring thing. And a lot of it was history sort of dependent. It was more like seeing your environment now through a lens of how towns develop, why roads are built to certain places, and then that lends itself to billboards, and billboards lends itself to like advertisement and pop culture, and everyone all of a sudden is trying to buy the next Ford, and everyone's trying, and it's just sort of like how our culture became sort of the pop culture world that it is now, through the New Deal and starting in earlier mid-century America. And I don't know, I thought that was the most interesting thing. And so I wish that I had been more receptive and more open to different things earlier in college, but oh well, here I am now, making it happen.
So lesson for our students is every class you take, there's probably something there that you should really pay attention to, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And if you take a class that you absolutely love, you should listen to your instincts.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the biggest thing, is like I was so driven about doing this one profession that I had set my mind to do, when I should have been open to receiving sort of things from the universe that might be telling me differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I would love to talk a little bit about collaboration. You obviously are collaborating with other departments. One of the things I wanted to ask is, you mentioned the Duffer Brothers are incredibly easy. Not every director is going to be easy. You can present lookbooks.
I say they're easy. They're not easy they're only easy really with art.
Okay. There you go.
It's super difficult for other,
okay. Well, they're easy.
Yeah.
They're easy with you, but
yes.
Because you're doing period design, accuracy is going to be huge for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance creating accuracy and also supporting a director's vision, which may not always suit accuracy?
Well, okay. I think I told you the story about my experience with Luca Guadagnino in Boston, the last movie I just got back from finishing. And he's an Italian man with very, very strong ideas. He believes in his own sense of design and vision, and he doesn't really want to hear always what you have to say. He's receptive because he wants to be accurate, but then there's certain limitations. So a good example of this would be a dorm room that we were doing for 2006 Stanford. And it was Zendaya was in this movie. And so there's a whole love scene in this bed. But I was trying to tell him that like, it's going to look crazy if we do a dorm room and it doesn't have a twin bed. A twin bed is standard. It doesn't have to be a bunk bed. It could be a single room, but I can't put a queen bed in a dorm room. I just can't do it. It's like beyond anything and he was not wanting to hear it. And so when he showed up, I had a twin bed in this dorm room. I had a double bed, queen bed or whatever, standing outside the set, fully dressed, ready to go. But he still like totally pitched a fit and insisted that we switch him out. And so I had to relent and give in, and it was just so painful for me. But Luca being like the kind of exception to the rule, I mean, most directors want to be accurate unless you're intentionally doing something that's like supposed to be stylized or intentionally be distracting or, usually it's just about establishing that communication line and being able to sort of reason with them and show them visual aids, show them, that's why the lookbooks come in handy as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just hope that they get on board for whatever it is.
I know that you also said specifically for Stranger Things, and I definitely want to talk about this. You collaborate a good bit with visual effects. Can you talk a little bit specific to Stranger Things and how you work with visual effects in post-production?
Yeah. So we, like I mentioned with the Nether, for example, that's a pretty straightforward thing. Like we're adding a base layer, they're going to enhance it. That's whatever. And then all the creature effects, that's kind of their own thing. But where it really overlaps with like set deck and production design is if there's something that we've chosen the location in the world and it's the perfect place, but let's say like the backdrop behind it or something down the street or whatever is not period, then I try to watch all the dailies and pay attention to everything and try to be on set as much as I can because the cinematographer and the DP is going to look like wherever he wants to look. He's not going to listen to me. I say, do not look down this road. Do not look down this road. He will look down the road. And so, making notes for visual effects to go in and replace certain things or change certain things in post-production is super important. And having that ability now, like when I first got into film, it wasn't so much the case, but now I know it's kind of like a joke, like they'll fix it in post. But that is a huge benefit. And if you're paying attention to things and you have a good relationship with that department, like visual effects, then you can, they'll help you out and save you from a huge stucco modern house or whatever it is that you can't see. Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about Vecna in particular, because you said that you actually were pretty collaborative. I mean, I don't often hear of set decorators being as collaborative as you are, on Stranger Things. Can you talk a little bit about how Vecna came to be and some of the different iterations of Vecna?
Yeah. So when we first read him on the page, I definitely had my idea of what I thought it should be in my mind. And like, I think the production designer did as well. And I think we both were leaning more towards like a creepy sort of androgynous old man body kind of thing that was like, because there's something creepier to me about that than the like predator looking sort of like muscular type of monster. So we had been pushing the Duffers to kind of consider that. I mean, it is important to talk to, no matter what, if you're going to have someone suspended in a space and the space needs to, it all has to be a collaborative effort. It's all going to have to fit together ultimately. But yeah, we were trying to push them towards a more like the Pan's Labyrinth kind of monster. The guy who had the eyes, in his hands and stuff. And there's just something about some of those characters to me that's scarier than a sort of muscular, like strong looking guy. And it also seemed to fit Henry's character earlier on, and he's kind of this sort of not a nerd, but he's like kind of a slight man, right? Also a little bit effeminate or something. And so we just seemed like such a jump to go to such a sort of a strong monster physical presence. But
he was young though. I mean, it'd been a few years. Maybe he got a little stronger, right?
Yeah. It's like a small thing. Predator combo to me is what Vecna turned out to be. But it sounds like people like him. I think
he's scary. He's really scary.
And the no nose thing is just scary to me. In general. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, what was your biggest challenge on this season in particular, when it came to the set deck?
I mean, 100%, it was just being in 3 locales at the same time, being in Lithuania filming, being in Atlanta, and being in Albuquerque is really hard. And I don't like to let control go to other people. So it was hard for me to sort of like hire people, but not be there and trust that they're like doing the right thing. And, I had them send me photos like constantly every day is like a photo dump of like what they bought, what, clusters of things together. So I could see the sets as they're kind of coming together. But yeah. And then just like COVID being in the middle of it didn't help anything either. I mean, we had done the Krill House in Rome. I had finished dressing the trailer park and the like Counselor Kelly's office. So they were shooting the trailer park and Counselor Kelly's. I went to Albuquerque for a few days to scout and look at some things. And that's when the world shut down, basically. It was like March of, 2020. And so, production called and said, get on a plane, come home now. We're shutting down, like everything's shutting down. And I was just, the realization of that. And then I ended up losing my crew there because of COVID and everything. So I had to like kind of hire a whole another set of people. I mean, it's just logistics of season 4 were immense.
Were challenging. Yeah. What was your favorite? Yeah. What was your favorite thing that you did on season 4?
It's always these dumb little, like the dumbest little sets. And I mean, really dumb, but the production designer and I and the art director said that season 2, our favorite was, there's a Bob Newby little insert of him on the phone with Joyce and in a Radio Shack. And we built this like a 2-wall set with like a Radio Shack backdrop and like anyway. And we said that was hands down our best set of the season, we're kind of kidding, but we're like kind of not kidding. And so this season, our favorite set that we did was the Alaska motel room, which we built like 3 times in different places. And they kept like canceling the shoot for that set and having to push it down the road. And we were so frustrated because our set looked so good. And then they wanted us to like do it practically in Albuquerque, anyway. But the name of the hotel was the Americana Hotel. We'd already decided. So bringing like some of that kind of 60s Americana, like just subtle motel vibe into the set. I thought that was, we loved that set. And then the buyer's house was also a ton of fun to do.
Right. How difficult are locations for you? I mean, because you're primarily, again, I know New Mexico and Lithuania, but for the most part, you're filming in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Are locations hard to come by, especially when you're looking for kind of that 80s feel, that nostalgic feel?
Well, fun fact, I don't know if people are aware of this, and I don't ever put it in credits anymore because it's like kind of distracting and takes away from what I really do, which is I'm a decorator, but my father would tell you I'm a better locations person than I am a decorator. But I scouted all of the Stranger Things locations. So those are all kind of my babies that I find, and then we take them, from there. I'm like every location manager's worst nightmare because I meddle the shit out of everything, and I'm never happy with anything that they choose. So it's great to be in Georgia because I can, especially Atlanta, because I can usually scout or at least have some input on what we choose as a location, because there's really like nothing worse or less satisfying than basically like lipstick on a pig. Like if they pick some dumb location and there's no point in being there, we could have done so much better and taken something great and made it even greater. And then now instead I'm just trying to deal with some, turd that they handed us. So, So it's not that, I mean, Atlanta, there are better cities for sure than Atlanta, but Atlanta has its like neighborhoods and stuff, like the neighborhood, Mike's neighborhood, the Wheeler neighborhood, where Dustin's house is. I don't know if you can tell in the show that it's like really close by, but it is. And then Lucas's house is also there. That's actually a friend of my dad in high school. His dad developed that neighborhood. Barb's house in season 2 and 3 or whatever that we see is my dad's prom date from high school, her parents' house. So I kind of was aware of all of these places anyway, like growing up and just driving around and like looking at stuff with him. So that, it's cool to see it come full circle and being able to use it now. So.
Mm-hmm. And again, that drives back to you saying, keep your eyes open at all times. You never know.
Oh my gosh. Like I drive around Atlanta and I'm like, oh my God, that could be Miami. Or like, that could be like, it's like one angle of one building is like the right architecture or the right, whatever. And it's just like paying attention and trying to remember all of those things, they'll come in handy. Yeah.
I have one last question for you, and then we're going to start to take some audience questions because we've got a lot of them coming in. You mentioned the other day too that you create backstories for all of the characters, and that helps you when it comes to designing the sets. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we, I'm sure probably most decorators and production designers work this way, but having a full idea of who someone is, even if there are gaps in what's on the page, trying to fill those in and come up with like a full backstory, like a bio for every character, just kind of keeps everybody moving in the right direction. So sometimes we create them without talking to the duffers, and maybe they had something in mind and they're going to get around to like writing that later. But we already have, like I was telling Brantley, that we, for forever in the very beginning, we thought that Lucas was, his dad was a single parent and his mom had left because he was like abusive to her because he's like a Vietnam vet who had like post-traumatic stress disorder, all this, whatever. And actually you can see that in Lucas's room. If you look around, there's like a photo of his dad, like in Nam, in like little military things. And anyway, it's just a backstory that we created because it helps give us direction. And so sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot because the duffers are like, what do you mean that Lucas's dad's a single dad? His dad's not a single dad. Like, he has a mom, his mom's scripted. Like, we saw her on camera and it's like, oh, right. I keep forgetting that Lucas has a mom. But, yeah, it is. I think it is a helpful way to approach, just doing a set for any character, no matter how little information you have, just trying to extrapolate something that's, a bigger story.
Well, you're telling stories is what you're doing. And so a person's bedroom tells a story about who they are. So it would make sense. I mean, writers create backstories, directors create backstories. That's what we all do as artists, right? So it only makes sense. Okay, so we have our first questions actually coming from Lacoste, France.
Okay.
They're coming up in just a moment.
Okay, right.
We may be having an issue getting them up. So why don't we go, if we can't get them up first, we can definitely have Mariana come up and ask a question. Hi, Mariana.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I'm a film and TV senior here at SCAD Atlanta. I tend to also do a lot of art department work here. So I actually saw on the Stranger Things writers a Twitter page a picture of like the vines and stuff you guys created for the Upside Down world. And I wanted to know more about like the use of practical elements and the mix of CGI, and also just like maybe some challenges you encountered while creating kind of this like aesthetic for the Upside Down.
Yeah, so we have had a couple different like special effects coordinators on our show, and so the minutia of how the vines are made have changed a little bit, and we've gotten more efficient in how we do it. Season 1, I mean, I have videos. I almost wish I'd shared them with you in advance, Brantley, because I have videos of like originally season 1, when we were going to do everything practically, we wanted to do like no visual effects, which is crazy in hindsight. But I have like a video of the wallpaper wall in the buyer's house that we printed on latex, and the Demogorgons breaking through that wall. And we were trying to like have all this stuff behind him that would come. Anyway, it looks ridiculous. It's the worst bullshit you've ever seen in your whole life. The Duffers are like so embarrassed that I even have this video still. But it looks like spaghetti like hanging down and stuff. Anyway, so a lot of it's like trial and error. And then once we kind of have a process that works, like season 1, we were doing the vines and we were adding a bunch of the sort of like slimy elements on top of it. And we still do a little bit of that if it's like really close up, but we just do so much now, like such big spaces. It's hard to add in all those elements, and visual effects can do it so well and so easily in post that it's just about covering enough area with the base layer of something, and then they can just take it from there. So we're not focusing or wasting so much time on all of the little, making everything glisten and do all these other things. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for answering.
Mariana. All right, now we have our Lacoste students ready to ask a question. Hi there.
Hi, my name is Morgan Evans. I'm a film and television student. And thank you so much for being here. I feel like Stranger Things is so interesting to watch because of its set decoration. So this is so interesting to me. And I kind of have two separate questions. So the first one is how much time do you have for aging the house, Vecna's house? How much time did you have for the process of that? And then the second question I have is actually about location scouting. I'm very interested if you have any advice for students who would like to get into location scouting around the Atlanta area.
Okay, so I'm going to start actually with your first question because it matters a lot to me, and it's actually how I got my foot in the door for film. So anytime someone asks me like, how did you get started in film? Can I be in film? Can I, and it's like, my advice is to find that thing that you're best at, whatever it is, and make yourself invaluable. Even if it's not the thing you think you want to do later. Because I knew I wanted to be a set decorator. I'd always said that. But my skill set that was most valuable to anyone at the time was my knowledge of Atlanta and the surrounding areas. So I was able to sort of put myself out there to do that. And I was very good at it. It was hard to get them to give me the chance to go into the art park stuff. But at least my foot was in the door and everyone knew who I was. So that's important. So if you have any knowledge of Atlanta and you're like aware of sort of like neighborhoods and parts of Atlanta and like how they've, aged, and it's trying to find that right balance between like a socioeconomic area that hasn't updated everything, but has the right era of houses and the bones are all good. I mean, it's just like, we could have a bigger conversation like over dinner sometime, but it's just like going to estate sales is a big part of being aware of how neighborhoods are aging, and sort of like what's inside people's houses. Like I could drive by a house and tell you almost with certainty, like they probably have a linoleum floored mudroom. They probably have like a finished basement. They have, and you start to see these like little tells on the outside of a house. It'll tell you what's on the inside of a house. And then as you're scouting, to me, it's like continuing education because you're seeing how people have sort of lived their lives and what they've saved and what's important to them. And so sometimes you'll find a house where someone lives and it's like the same as a character that you already have that you're shopping for or whatever. And it's like a fully, you can just take this whole person's life and translate it onto stage or on, to a different location or something. And it's important to see kind of like how people keep their family photos, how people keep, it's just like, because all those subtle things and how you layer those in on an actual set, I think even if it's not totally featured on camera, it's there and the actors feel it and the director feels it and it makes everyone just be in the moment. So being like a full 360 about your process, starting from the location all the way through is important. But scouting to me is like the most invaluable sort of knowledge resource that I have. It comes from scouting, like scouting trailer parks and photographing everyone's trailers on the inside of their trailer is like a resource that I'll have for forever. Like, oh, you keep toilet paper on top of a piano in your trailer? Like, that's so weird. But I'll do it on camera because I saw it in real life and it, I can justify it. So anyway, enough about scouting. As far as the house goes and how long it took to age, I want to say it took like a month almost, really, like start to finish, probably with a team of painters in there, like doing dust aging and like heat, removal of the wallpaper and all that stuff. And then they come in and do the cobwebs and everything else. So like, I think start to finish, it was about a month. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
I know that we have a production design student from Lacoste that's going to come up next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys? I just thought I'd ask. Yeah, I'm Anders. I'm a production design student. I'm like a third year. Doesn't really matter. But I just want to hear more about like how you go about.
We lost them. Lacoste is a long way away.
Oh,
So while we're waiting on them to join, we have another student, which is going to be Adriana. Okay, I tell you what, we're going to wait on Adriana to come back up. Oh, there we go. We've got Adriana.
Hi, my name is Adriana. I'm a film and TV major, and I'm in my sophomore year. And first of all, I want to thank you for being here and taking your time to talk about your experience doing Stranger Things stuff. It's been very interesting listening to you talk about it. And my question is, when you were working on the sets of the Krill House or the Upside Down, what were the measures of success that you took into account to determine that you have reached the entire look of the location?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I think as far as like just having the base layer of like set dressing, like furnishings and stuff in the Krill House, enough to motivate. Like we see it empty. We see it in the flashback in Nancy's like memory of them coming into the house. So it's totally empty then. So going from that point to where the family would have moved in, and we always have an idea of like how long have they been there, how unpacked are they, and we decided that they were like fully unpacked, living in their house. Maybe it's not totally full of furniture because it's a young family that's moving into a big empty house. But once it felt like warm enough and lived in enough, but still also allowing us just the practical space to work, to do some of these stunt scenes and things. It's just like making sure, every room, it's like you have, okay, what are the electronics in this room? What are the, what's the seating? What's the tabletop surface? How many tchotchkes and like small, decorative items did this family have? And so I think it's just like, it when you reach it kind of thing. And it felt like a pretty balanced, like good place to be once we kind of had it dressed there in Rome.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right, and we do have our Lacoste audience back. Great.
Yes. You hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I was just curious about the development of like what you imagine versus like what actually appears on screen, and like how like sourcing and creating. I feel like a lot of times I struggle with like, do I make that or do I find that? And like specific things, and like how your vision kind of changes based on like what's available and sourcing and all that stuff.
Yep.
So I just want to hear more about that.
That's a great question. So usually, okay, here's a good example of that. So the Demogorgon pit, and I don't think I actually sent this lookbook in when I sent Brantley everything, but like I did a whole, the Demogorgon pit, the like kind of arena fighting area, part of the Russian prison. We built it on our stage. It's like 3 stories tall. So we could achieve all that. That's fine. We copied a lot of the like the jail cell doors and stuff that we saw in Lithuania, where we did shoot like Hopper's initial scene where he's like in his cell. So we just took a lot of those elements and just replicated them. So construction and our welders built all that stuff. And then, so once we get into like the set deck stuff, it's like the lighting was the biggest part of it. And I was trying to source Russian lighting for most of that. And so, I mean, I'll do anything for good lighting. And there was this one town outside of Vilnius in Lithuania. It was this like Soviet town that was dead, like a totally abandoned, Chernobyl-looking, weird, Soviet bloc town. And no one lived there. So there are these streetlights that were really distinctive. And I would have to like pull up something to show you guys kind of what I'm talking about. But you see them, first we harvested these streetlights, I'll say that, from this town. We used them in Lithuania outside our guard shack. And there's kind of these like angled, with these like slots. If you watch it again and look for it, you'll see them. But so we had them outside our guard shack. Then we quickly, as quickly as we could, sent them back to the U.S. on a slow boat And then I took them and chopped them down and also replicated more of them. We welded more of them with the original streetlights to be in our Demogorgon pit to sort of tie it all together. So you feel like some of the exterior lights are the same as the interior lights. So that was one of those things that was like, I was planning on if I had to build it, fine. But once we found them in the real world, it was like, oh, we have to get these things out of this town. So I'm not even sure what all they went to with the municipalities and stuff in Lithuania to make that deal, or maybe they didn't make a deal and they just stole them. I don't know. But that was a really cool thing to have that was real. But what I usually do is set a deadline for myself. And it's like, okay, if we don't have these by the end of next week, if there's no leads on them, I'm stopping the hunt and we're going to build it. And so that's kind of usually, I just try to set a deadline so that you don't run out the clock and end up screwed where no one wants to build this for you, or there's not time to build it and there's no time to find it. And then you're just kind of, left holding the bag. So deadlines are good, especially when you have a team of people out looking for things. It's like everyone, there has to be a buzzer that everyone kind of just stops and we reassess.
Right. All right, so we've got a lot of questions coming in from the chat, and I already know the answer to this one, so I'm going to tweak it just a little bit. Christian Wheeler is an immersive reality sophomore. If you weren't aware, Jess, we have an immersive reality degree program at SCAD. We have one XR stage already that's been constructed in Savannah, and our Atlanta XR stage will be open very soon. This is obviously very new technology. And so Christian wants to know what your experience is with XR stages, and they're growing in popularity. Are you looking forward to working on one? Is that something that you think is in the near future for you?
Oh, I feel old because I don't have any experience with XR reality. I think I mean, it's kind of probably similar to the same thing as like visual effects, and that transformation happened so fast. Back when everyone was doing a lot of practical stunts and special effects and everything. And now it's like everyone sort of leans immediately towards visual effects being the way to go. So I've seen the benefits of it. It's kind of like, being able to shoot however you want to shoot something and then just deal with it later is a nice thing. So I assume that, I don't know, the XR is probably similar to that.
It's the future. It is the future. I will say that we had Industrial Light and Magic at our Gaming Fest recently, and they did a breakdown of some of the XR stage components on the Mandalorian, and everything was designed. I mean, they had set deck, but what they did is they would take images and then they would put it on the XR stage so that actors can work with it in real time. It's really incredible in terms of the bottom line as well as what's possible. So
right.
Get ready, Jess, because it's coming.
I know, I'm such a Luddite. I have to really get with the times, but.
Okay, so we have a question from Leanna, who is a junior production design major, and she loved seeing the transition of the Krill House. She wants to know, how long did it take to transform the house from one state to the next in general? And then, which you've already talked about that, but can you elaborate too on how many people were actually involved in that process?
So I think it was probably more than a month to get the house from like where it currently was when we found it in as a location to adding all of the like Lincrusta wainscoting and stuff, which is all the like textured sort of below that really chunky chair rail that we added in the foyer and everything, all the wallpaper. We painted the exterior of the house. So all of that start to finish was probably like 6 weeks of a whole crew of people. And I would guess with construction and paint, probably 20 people were up in Rome every day, like doing various things. Maybe not all the time, but 20 people, fairly regularly up there doing landscaping and paint and, carpentry work. So it was definitely a significant thing. And then, like I said, the aging the house was probably about a month with the team of painters and special effects people.
Right.
And then the nether, I call it the nether, and I know no one ever knows what I'm talking about. But
so you're talking about the upside down?
Yeah, the Duffers originally scripted it as the nether world. So, and then we had these nether vines, and that's what we've always called them. So, but then, pop culture, whatever, upside down is the way that people talk about it. So, but that process, that is a stressful and time consuming thing. And it's always like under the gun with scheduling in our shoot schedule. I don't even know how many. I don't know. They probably had like 6 or 7 special effects people, which is a lot for special effects doing that kind of work. And we just started, and it was like, are we going to see in this room? No. Okay, great. Shut that door. We're not doing that. Let's not waste our time. And it's just like trying to make the bare minimum that we were going to see as great as it could possibly be, so that there was a really, really good practical layer of stuff there. Yeah. Great.
Nico wants to note that going from law to film is obviously a pretty amazing career pivot, because it is. And they want to talk about how you navigated that transition. And I think I'd like for you, if possible, to build on, when something like Stranger Things comes up, how do you go for those roles? I mean, do you have to show a portfolio? Do you is it mostly word of mouth? Like, what's the best way to break into some of these larger productions?
Right. Well, I will say that from law to film was a little bit of a, I knew I wanted to do something creative. I was miserable because we had criminal defense clients who were all guilty. At some point I realized, like, oh my God, they're all guilty, like murderers and child molesters. So I did not want to do that with the rest of my life. And I considered different things, like, do I want to be an art teacher? No, I should shoot bigger than that. Okay. Do I want to be, I thought I wanted to do like restaurant design, which kind of satisfied some of my loves, but it wasn't enough. And then I watched this back when before HBO was like all streaming and on demand. You'd have to just watch HBO, like whatever was on HBO, you just watched. It would, and they had these like connecting little things, behind the scenes stuff. And so the Revolutionary Road was coming on, and they had a behind the scenes with the production designer and the set decorator. And they were talking about their period approach to film and how they would go about like dressing a home office with like all the stuff that would be in all the drawers in a home office from 1950, whatever. And I just was like, I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to be a set decorator. Like, I don't know why I didn't pick production designer when I was listening to that behind the scenes, but I just like set my sights on set decorator. And then like one thing led to another, and I crossed paths with a guy who's a production designer scouting for a movie in where my parents lived in Madison, Georgia. And so I just like was like, production designer, does that mean you work with like a set decorator? And he was like, yeah, kid, like, okay, whatever. And I was like, I want to do what you do. And that's when I got my in scouting, and cause they had all these places they were looking for they couldn't find. So I was able to help them find those. One thing led to another. So that's that transition. As far as like the skill set, my best skill in law was to pick juries. Was really good at picking juries. I could tell you, like, that guy is not going to convict. No way, no how. And like just putting the right questions on a questionnaire for a jury where you can like use those to lead into other questions and sort of like make a lot of assumptions about someone, which really is kind of the same thing when you're doing a set. Is like you're reading words on a page and you're taking a little bit and you're assuming a lot, and you're building a whole world around that. So it's not as like crazy as everyone thinks for transition wise, but yes, I have no like fine art background whatsoever. No, but I can like do like napkin sketches, but that's about it. I'm not like a AutoCAD person or anything. So, but we make it work. And then as far as like getting Stranger Things, the production designer and we worked together previously, and we've been working, we've done a few movies together, and we kept saying like, one day, man, like we're going to get our break. It's like, it's all going to happen for us. And we just get, and I'm sure everyone says that. But then we got this script for episode 1, season 1, and it was called Montauk at the time. And it was based in Montauk, New York. And that was it. You never know, but you assume like, this is going to be something. Like, I think people will watch this. This is great. And so we already actually had the job when we got the scripts, because the production designer had worked with the Ross Duffer's wife. Lee Janiak is also a director, and he'd done a movie with her. And Lee is like the woman behind the scenes who makes everything happen for Stranger Things. Like she's like, she'll push, like if she wants a DP to shoot an episode of Stranger Things, she will like tell the Duffers to like hire this DP, and they'll do it. And that's how literally everyone who's been there, who's like really like made a name for themselves on Stranger Things, has probably come through Lee somehow. But she's just a really good like identifier of skill and like talent and niche sort of like, abilities. And so, yeah, I would say word of mouth was kind of for us, at least, what did it. And then once we were in, it's like a dream to work on the show. So obviously we weren't going anywhere. So
Right, of course. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. I just looked at the clock and realized that we've been having so much fun. I've lost track of time. Everyone, please join me in thanking Jess Royal. Jess, we all have our fingers crossed that you're going to bring home that Emmy this year.
Tough competition, but we'll see.
It is a tough competition, but it's also deserved. So a few quick notes. SCAD Animation Fest dates have been set. Be sure to mark your calendars for September 22nd through the 24th. SCAD Animation Fest features 3 days of special screenings, star-studded presentations, conversations with industry luminaries, and a showcase of animation excellence in SCAD student work. You can learn more at scad.edu/animationfest. And if you enjoyed what you saw today, which I'm sure you all did, please follow SCADFilm to stay in the know on other amazing virtual conversations, signature events, and screenings on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And you can find us at SCADFilm.